The smoke was thin but steady, curling over the treetops like a warning no one had listened to. Wyatt Bishop spotted it just past dusk, a dark line against the orange sky. By the time he reached the ridge, the wagon train was gone, burned to bone and ash. Buzzards circled. 3 bodies lay still, and then he saw her, tied to a broken wheel, barely conscious, blood at her temple. She looked up as he approached, blue eyes wide with fear. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, but in that moment, even he wasn't sure if he believed it. Wyatt Bishop moved like a man who'd spent too long in silence. His boots barely broke the brittle leaves beneath him as he approached the wreckage. The air was thick with smoke and the copper sting of blood. He'd seen raids before, Comanche, outlaws, drunk farmhands who thought killing was a shortcut to manhood. But this was something else. This was precise, ruthless. No survivors except her. She was still tied to the wagon wheel when he crouched beside her. Blonde hair tangled with soot and sweat, wrists rubbed raw from rope, lips cracked and bleeding. He held the canteen to her mouth. She flinched. "I ain't gonna hurt you," he said again, softer this time. "But we can't stay here." She drank greedily, coughed, then managed a hoarse whisper. "They killed them. All of them." Wyatt nodded once. He knew that already. What mattered now was getting her out. He cut the ropes. She cried out, her hands flying to her side. "Ribs," she gasped. "Something's broken. I'll carry you." She didn't argue, didn't ask who he was or where they were going. There wasn't time for trust, only necessity. He wrapped her in his coat and lifted her into his arms. She weighed less than his saddlebag. Her breath was shallow, but she stayed awake. "Name's Wyatt," he said after a while, picking his way through the dark pines. "Wyatt Bishop." She didn't reply for a minute. "Clara," she said finally. "Clara Hensley." They didn't speak again until he reached his camp. Just a fire pit, a lean-to of pine boughs and a horse tied to a low branch. He laid her gently onto a blanket and added wood to the fire. Clara watched him move, her eyes wary. "You a bounty hunter?" "No." "Outlaw?" "Not anymore." She blinked. "Then what are you?" He stirred the fire. "A man who don't like seeing women left to die." Wyatt boiled water, added bark and a pinch of herbs from a pouch at his hip. "For the pain," he said, offering the cup. She drank, grimaced, then leaned back and exhaled. "They were after our gold," she murmured. "My brother." He tried to stop them. They laughed. Wyatt sat beside the fire, silent. He'd seen this before. The way loss hollowed people out from the inside, made them weightless and numb. He wouldn't press her. Not yet. "I saw one of their faces," Clara said suddenly. "He had a scar, across his chin, deep." Wyatt's jaw clenched. "That narrows it down less than you think." She looked at him. "You know them." "I know the type." They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. An owl called in the distance, and the wind moved through the trees like a whisper of something unfinished. "I was supposed to get married," Clara said, "after we made it west. My fiancé sent money to build a home." She laughed, bitter. "He'll think I ran off." Wyatt didn't respond. He just leaned back, eyes on the sky. "People believe what's easiest to bear," he said finally. "Don't mean it's true." Clara turned her face toward the flames. "And what's your truth, Mr. Bishop?" "I had a brother," he said. "Once." She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. Sleep came in fits. Clara drifted off and woke with a start, gasping for breath, clutching at her side. Wyatt was always near, eyes open, rifle across his lap. He didn't say much, just watched, waited. At dawn, she sat up with a wince. "I need to keep moving. If they come back—" "They won't," Wyatt said. "Raiders like that don't circle. They burn, they strip, and they ride." Clara looked at him closely. "So why are you still here?" Wyatt met her gaze. "Because you are." She studied him a long moment, then looked away. "I don't know how to thank you." He stood and offered her his hand. "Then don't, just walk." Clara let him help her up. Her legs trembled and pain twisted her features, but she didn't fall. Together they disappeared into the trees. The forest swallowed them whole, Every step Clara took sent pain lancing up her side, but she didn't complain. Wyatt moved ahead, scanning the trees like the wind spoke to him. His rifle rested across his back. One hand hovered near the knife at his hip. He didn't walk like a man just keeping pace. He walked like someone who expected ghosts behind every tree. "Where are we going?" Clara asked after a while, her voice dry and brittle. "There's a ridge west of here," Wyatt said without looking back. "Old hunting trail leads down into a canyon. Harder to track us there." Clara paused, leaned on the walking stick he'd carved for her that morning. "You really think they're still looking?" "Depends. On what?" "Whether they left anyone alive who saw your face." Her breath caught, but she didn't argue. He wasn't saying it to scare her. He was just saying it. Plain truth carried like that. She'd learned to recognize it in her father's voice, and now in Wyatt's. By midday, they reached a stream that cut through the woods, water running cold and clean over smooth stones. Clara knelt beside it, cupped her hands and drank until her ribs protested. Wyatt refilled their canteen and knelt across from her. "We'll camp a few miles down," he said. "Should be an old trapper's shack, if it's still standing." She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "And after that?" He hesitated. "You got people somewhere?" She looked away. "Not anymore." "Then we head south, away from the rail lines. Outlaws follow money. We'll find somewhere quiet." She gave him a look. "There's no quiet left, is there?" He didn't answer. Just stood, offered his hand again. The shack wasn't much, a collapsed roof, 3 leaning walls, and a stove rusted through, but it held the bones of shelter. Clara sank onto an old crate and let out a breath that rattled in her chest. Wyatt built a fire just outside, far enough that the smoke wouldn't choke them inside. He worked in silence, fingers deft, efficient. Clara watched him for a long time, the way he moved, the way he didn't ask questions she couldn't yet answer. "You said you had a brother," she said, breaking the quiet. Wyatt paused, then tossed another branch on the fire. "Caleb, he was younger, quicker, meaner." "What happened?" Wyatt stared into the flames. "We rode together for a time, back when we thought the world owed us something." She didn't press. He looked like a man who spoke his past in pieces, never all at once. "I think he's dead," Wyatt added, "but I don't know for sure. Part of me hopes he is. The other part hopes he isn't." Clara looked at the fire, eyes distant. "My brother David tried to shield me when they came. Told me to run. I didn't." Her voice cracked. "I froze. He died because I couldn't move." Wyatt glanced at her, the firelight casting shadows across his face. "He died because evil men made a choice, not because you didn't." She wiped a tear that had found its way down her cheek. "I used to believe things happen for a reason. And now I think things just happen." Wyatt nodded. "Maybe, but what you do next still matters." That night, as wind whispered through the trees, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay on a blanket inside the broken-down shack, the stars visible through a crack in the roof. Wyatt sat just outside the door, sharpening a blade. "Do you ever sleep?" she asked. "Sometimes." She rolled onto her side, ribs protesting. "Are you always like this?" "Like what?" "Alone." He didn't answer right away. "It's easier that way." Clara closed her eyes. "Doesn't seem easier to me." Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken things. She didn't know why she trusted him. Maybe it was the way he never tried to own her pain. Just carried it alongside her like a pack he didn't mind bearing. In the dark, just before sleep took her, she whispered, "Thank you." Wyatt didn't say anything, but he sat there, keeping watch long after the fire had died to coals. The morning broke slow and gray, mist crawling low across the tree line like it had secrets to keep. Clara stood near the edge of the trail, her breath visible in the cold air. She held the walking stick tight, her ribs still raw beneath the bruises. Wyatt moved ahead, silent as ever, scanning every bend like he was expecting something to crawl out of the shadows. They had traveled half the day when Wyatt stopped abruptly and knelt, pressing 2 fingers to the dirt. Clara stepped beside him. "What is it?" she whispered. "Tracks." He touched the faint outline of a boot print. Fresh. At least 3 riders. Moving slow, maybe looking for something. She felt her stomach twist. Looking for me. Could be. He rose, eyes sweeping the woods. We need to move faster. They took an old game trail, barely wide enough for one. The brush clawed at them like angry hands, but Wyatt didn't slow. Clara grit her teeth and followed. Pain bloomed with every step, but fear burned hotter than her broken ribs. By mid-afternoon, they crested a ridge that opened onto a rocky basin. Below lay the remains of an abandoned mining town. The buildings slouched against the wind, roofs sagging, doors swinging loose on rusted hinges. Clara swallowed. This place looks like it's been dead a long time. Not dead, Wyatt muttered. Just sleeping. They picked their way down the slope, careful not to dislodge any rocks. At the base, Wyatt stopped in front of the saloon. The faded sign above the door read, Silver Hollow in peeling red paint. He touched the wood gently, almost like a memory lived beneath the grain. I've been here before. Clara watched his face shift, just barely, but it was enough. When? Long time ago. She didn't ask more. Not yet. Inside, the air was stale with dust and old sorrow. Light filtered in through shattered windows. A piano stood crooked in the corner, one key eternally pressed, holding a ghost of a note. Wyatt led her to a back room with half a roof and a bed frame rusted at the corners. We'll stay here for the night, he said. I'll set traps around the perimeter. He moved like a man returning to old ground, wary, burdened. Clara touched the wall, then turned to him. You knew someone here. He stopped mid-step, then nodded once. My mother. Clara's lips parted, but no words came. She worked in this town, he said, voice low. Tried to, when they let her. After my father died, it was just us. But even that was too much for them. He glanced at the broken window. One night they barred the door, smashed the windows, told her to leave. She told me to run through the back. Clara's eyes stung. She stayed. Wyatt's jaw tightened. She gave them what they wanted so I could get away. Silence fell like snow, cold, quiet, suffocating. Before Clara could speak, a sound cut through the stillness. Hoofbeats, multiple, slow, measured. Wyatt tensed. Stay here. He grabbed his rifle and disappeared out the back. Clara moved to the broken window, careful not to make a sound. Outside, 3 riders emerged from the trees, their faces rough, familiar. One dismounted slowly, every movement lazy and practiced. His coat flapped in the wind, a shotgun resting on one shoulder. Wyatt stepped out from the shadows. The man smiled wide. Didn't expect to find you here, brother. Clara's breath caught. Brother? Wyatt said nothing, just stood there, rifle low but ready. The man circled closer. You always did like hiding in ruins. Guess nothing's changed. Caleb, Wyatt said quietly. Caleb's grin widened. So you do remember my name? Touching. You led the raid on the wagon train. Didn't know the girl was yours, Caleb shrugged. Could have left her, but that felt too easy. Clara stepped outside before she could stop herself. You're his brother? Caleb turned, eyes gleaming. Well, ain't she something? You didn't tell her, huh? About the old days? Clara looked at Wyatt. What's he talking about? Wyatt's voice was a whisper. Before I left him, I rode with him. Briefly, before I knew who he really was. Caleb laughed. Don't lie to her now. You taught me everything I know. You were the ghost they all feared before I ever held a knife. Clara felt the ground shift beneath her. It's true? Wyatt looked at her, eyes heavy. Yes. The truth landed hard, colder than the wind. You can't run from blood, Caleb said, stepping closer. Come with me, brother. Bring the girl. We'll make the territory burn again. Wyatt's rifle rose an inch. No. Caleb's smile faded. Then you've picked your side. He mounted his horse. You got one day. When I come back, you'd best be gone, or ready to die. With that he turned, and the riders vanished into the trees. Clara stood frozen. Wyatt didn't try to touch her, just said, I'm not who I was. Clara whispered, but you didn't tell me. I was ashamed. She walked back inside, the truth echoing in her bones. Outside, Wyatt stood alone again, like always. The night didn't bring rest. Clara sat by the cold fireplace, arms wrapped tight around her knees, staring at the scorched wood of the floor. Sleep wouldn't come, not with Wyatt's confession ringing in her ears. He'd ridden with Caleb. He'd been part of the same darkness that destroyed her world, but he'd also carried her, fed her, fought for her. Outside, the wind shifted, bringing the faint scent of pine and rot. Wyatt sat on the saloon steps, rifle across his lap, watching the darkness as if it might try to speak to him. Clara stepped out finally, the wooden boards creaking beneath her boots. "You left him once," she said. He didn't turn. "Yeah." "Then leave him again." A beat passed. "I'm not running this time." "Then what? You'll die in a shootout over a mistake you already walked away from?" Wyatt looked at her now. In the faint light of the stars, his face seemed carved from stone and sorrow. "He won't stop. He made that clear. If I run, we both die somewhere down the line. I'd rather end it now." Clara's voice dropped. "What if I said I'd stand with you?" He blinked. "I'd say you're too smart for that." "Maybe not," she said. "But I've had enough of running too." Their eyes met. For the first time, the distance between them wasn't fear. It was choice. That night, they didn't speak again. But as Wyatt cleaned his rifle by the fire and Clara reloaded bullets with trembling fingers, something settled between them, like a pact signed without words. By dawn, they were moving. Wyatt led her through the hills behind the town, every step careful, methodical. He pointed out hiding spots, angled vantage points, the places where an ambush would work best. "You've done this before," Clara murmured. He nodded once. "Too many times." They returned to Silver Hollow by midday. The sky had begun to darken with the promise of another storm. Wyatt handed her a revolver and showed her how to load it. Again, her hands were steadier this time. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I'm going to." He nodded with quiet approval. "Stay behind the feed store. You'll have cover. Don't fire unless you have a shot. And you. I'll be on the saloon roof. I'll see them before they see you." The hours dragged. Clara sat with her back pressed to the warped boards, the revolver resting on her lap. She could hear her heart in her ears, louder than the wind, louder than the creak of the old town. She thought about her brother, his final shout telling her to run, about the way the fire had sounded chewing through canvas and bone, and about the man who had pulled her from that hell without asking for anything in return. She wasn't afraid of Wyatt. She was afraid of losing him. Just after noon, dusk curled on the southern trail. She stood and peeked through the slats. They came slowly, deliberate, like a bad memory returning. 10 riders now. Caleb at the front, his shotgun gleaming across his saddle horn. His grin was wide, but his eyes were narrowed, already scanning for his brother. "Let's get this over with," Clara muttered. A hawk circled high above, a single scream cutting across the sky. Wyatt stood up on the saloon roof. Clara couldn't hear what he said, but she saw Caleb halt. Then came the reply, louder, mocking. A shot rang out, not from Wyatt, not from her, from one of Caleb's men, jumpy, overeager. The bullet cracked into the building behind Wyatt, splinters flying. Then Wyatt returned fire. One shot, clean. One of the riders dropped. Chaos exploded. Clara ducked instinctively as bullets sliced through the air. She steadied herself, rose and fired. The revolver kicked harder than she remembered. A man screamed, clutching his leg and tumbling from his horse. Another came around the alley beside her. She turned, but Wyatt's arrow caught him before he reached her, silent and deadly. The fight turned close. One of the bandits tried to flank the saloon, but Wyatt dropped from the rooftop and met him hand to hand. The scuffle was brutal. Grunts, knives flashing, fists cracking bone. Wyatt was wounded, a deep cut along his side, but he didn't slow. Clara reloaded with shaking fingers, each bullet clicking into place like a prayer. When she rose again, only 4 riders remained. And Caleb. He dismounted, stalking through the street with fire in his eyes and blood on his boots. "You think this ends with me, brother?" he called. Wyatt stepped from the shadows, bloodied but standing. It ends with me. No, Caleb spat. It ends with her. He raised his gun. Clara didn't hesitate. She fired once. Center mass. Caleb staggered, eyes wide in disbelief, blood blooming across his chest. He fell to his knees, then crumpled. The rest fled. No words, no honor, only fear. Clara ran to Wyatt. He was down on one knee, breathing hard. Are you? I'm fine, he grunted. Stubborn, remember? She threw her arms around him, tears slipping free now that it was done. They buried Caleb outside the town, beneath the shadow of the ridge. Wyatt didn't say much, just placed a stone over the grave and stood with his head bowed. That night, as they sat beside the fire, Clara whispered, I didn't think I could do it. You did, he said. I think I just wanted you to live. You gave me a reason too. She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. For the first time in a long time, they didn't talk about the past. They just listened to the silence, the kind that felt like peace. Dawn came slow and warm, with golden light spilling over the shattered bones of Silver Hollow. The town, once silent in ruin, now felt different. Not alive, no, but like something had been released, a weight lifted, a name buried, a reckoning finished. Wyatt stood beside the saloon, the morning wind tugging at his coat, the gash in his side cleaned and stitched. Clara sat on the steps, a tin cup of coffee cradled between her hands, watching the sun rise over the hill Caleb had ridden down from. They hadn't spoken much since the fight, not because there was nothing to say, but because some things didn't need words. Not yet. Wyatt finally broke the silence. He was the last piece of who I used to be. Clara looked up, eyes soft. Then maybe now you can be someone else. He gave a faint nod. Funny thing is, I don't know who that is. Well, she said, standing and brushing off her dress, maybe we figure it out together. They broke camp within the hour. The town had given them shelter, fire, and closure, but nothing else. It had taken too much from him, and it held too much pain in its dust for her. Their horses were quiet beneath them as they rode out. The trail stretched east, narrow and winding, following the ridgeline, and then dipping down into open plains. Clover, somehow still strong after all they'd endured, moved with quiet determination. Clara winced with each step the horse took, her ribs not fully healed, her shoulder still tight from the recoil of the revolver. Wyatt noticed. You sure you don't want to rest another day? He asked. If I stop now, I'll just start thinking again, she replied. He understood. They rode most of the day without trouble. Hawks circled high above. The wind ran long over the grass. No more riders, no more threats. Just space, just silence. By mid-afternoon, they reached a creek lined with cottonwoods and the remains of a broken fence. Once a property line, maybe. Now just memory. We could camp here, Wyatt offered. Water, shade. And I don't see any tracks. Clara slid down from her saddle with a relieved groan. Sold. He smiled at that. Not a big smile. He never smiled big, but something eased in his face. They made camp on a soft patch of grass, far enough from the creek not to flood, but close enough to hear the water moving. Wyatt gathered wood while Clara tended to a small fire, using the flint and the steel he'd taught her with. When they sat down to eat, the stew was simple. Dried meat, wild onion, a few potatoes from an abandoned garden they'd passed, but warm, enough. Clara leaned back against a log, stretching her legs toward the flames. You think anyone's looking for us? She asked. Wyatt stared into the fire. If they are, they'll get tired before I do. She chuckled softly. That wasn't really an answer. Nope. A breeze rustled the leaves. The cottonwoods whispered their quiet stories overhead. Night settled slowly, stars blinking awake one by one. Clara's voice broke the quiet again. Did you ever think about settling down? He shrugged. Once, before things went dark. And now? He looked at her then, not with hesitation, not with guarded silence, but with something open, honest. I think I'd like to. She met his gaze. With me? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his satchel and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He held it out to her. She unwrapped it slowly. It was a small wooden horse carved by hand, rough but detailed. Its head was bowed, its legs sturdy. She traced a finger over its flank. "I carved it the first night I watched you sleep by the fire," Wyatt said. "Didn't know why at the time." Clara swallowed. "Now you do?" He nodded. "Because I knew something had changed. Not in the world. In me." She blinked, tears threatening. "You don't have to be anyone but who you are." "I know," he said, "but for the first time I want to be someone better." She stood, crossed the small space between them, and sat beside him. They didn't kiss. They didn't speak. They just leaned into each other, two pieces worn smooth by fire and pain, finally finding rest. Later, as they lay beneath the stars, Wyatt whispered, "What would you call it?" "What?" "This, United States, whatever we build." Clara thought for a long moment, her head on his shoulder, fingers resting near his heart. "Home," she said simply. Weeks passed like wind over prairie grass, slow, steady, but never still. Wyatt and Clara moved eastward at first, then north, skirting towns and settlements, seeking a place untouched by the memory of gunfire or ghosts. Somewhere they could stop running, somewhere they could begin again. They found it in a wide, sunlit valley hemmed in by cottonwoods and low hills, with a spring-fed creek winding through it like silver thread. The soil was good, the water was sweet, and more importantly, no one had claimed it. They built with their hands, first a lean-to, then a cabin. Rough-hewn logs, mud-chinked seams, a roof that only leaked when the rain was especially mean. It wasn't much, not compared to a town or a proper ranch, but it was theirs. Built slow, built honest. Clara grew stronger each day. The bruises faded, the ribs mended, and the limp in her step softened to nothing. She laughed more now, low and real, like music around a fire. She started planting things, herbs at first, then rows of carrots and beans. The green gave her comfort. Wyatt, for his part, never said much, but he worked beside her every day, carving fence posts, hunting game, patching leaks. He'd speak when it mattered, soft-spoken truths, little jokes, and sometimes, late at night, stories of his mother, of a brother who never came home, of what it meant to be both too much and not enough in two worlds. One evening, Clara returned from the creek with a basket of fish and found him carving again. This time it was a hawk, wings outstretched, eyes sharp. "That one's beautiful," she said, setting the basket down. He looked up, met her gaze. "It's for you." She smiled, a little shy still even now. "Why a hawk?" "Because you watch everything. You remember what others miss. And because when you came out of that fire, you didn't fall. You flew." Clara swallowed, eyes misting. "I never felt like I was flying." "You were," he said. "You just didn't know it yet." That night the wind picked up and the sky darkened quick. A storm rolled in from the west, thunder like distant drums, rain heavy and sudden. They huddled inside the cabin, fire crackling, tin cups of tea between them. "Do you think it'll ever find us again?" Clara asked. Wyatt knew what she meant. Caleb's shadow, the violence, the ache of a life they didn't choose. "Maybe," he said, "but this time we've got something it can't touch." "What's that?" He took her hand, calloused and warm. Each other. The storm passed before dawn. They stepped out onto damp grass. The world washed clean. Fog drifted like breath from the hills, and birds sang like nothing bad had ever happened. That morning, Wyatt set a fence post by the south field and paused. Clara stood across the yard, sleeves rolled up, laughing at something the wind had tossed in her hair. He watched her for a long while. Then he said it, loud enough for her to hear. "I love you, Clara." She turned, stunned, then smiled, bright, wide, full of life. "I know," she said. "I've been waiting for you to catch up." They didn't need a preacher. They didn't need rings. They had fire and sky and a home they built themselves. They had scars and soft words and a future carved from what was left behind. That night they danced barefoot in the grass. No music but wind. No audience but stars. And in the stillness that followed, wrapped in blankets in each other, Clara whispered, "You were wrong, you know. About what? I didn't fly out of that fire. He looked at her, brow furrowed. I fell, she said. And you caught me. Wyatt kissed her forehead. Then I guess we saved each other. The fire crackled low. The cabin breathed around them. And somewhere far off, where ghosts once rode and blood once soaked the earth, peace finally settled like ash on cold stone. They never looked back. If this story touched something deep inside you, don't scroll just yet. What would you have done in Clara's place? Would you have trusted a silent stranger like Wyatt? Tell us in the comments. We read every single one. And if you believe in stories of second chances and quiet love that grows from ashes, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales just like this. We'll see you in the next one, partner.